What if the difference between success and failure is simply refusing to quit? Today's guest has been proving that mindset for over 50 years. Chris Natzke is an eighth degree black belt, a national Taekwondo champion, a bestseller author, and a life leadership coach who has helped thousands of people break through their limits, both physically and mentally. From martial arts to businesses to personal growth, Chris teaches one powerful truth: a black belt is just a white belt who never gives up. If you're looking to build discipline, confidence, and a stronger mindset, this conversation is for you. Please join me in welcoming Chris Natzke. Let's get into it. Hello, Chris, and thank you for joining the Influence Exchange today.
I'm doing
How are
great.
you?
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And I'm excited to talk to you today for many amazing reasons. One of the reasons is my 9-year-old son. He studies in
Mhm.
Taekwondo. He just became a black belt in October of 2025. And I was talking to my son today about interviewing you, and he wanted to come downstairs with me, sit with me. And I told him, yes, you can, but you have to go to school tomorrow. So, but Chris, you are an eighth degree
Mhm.
black belt and a United States national
Mhm.
Taekwondo champion. Also, a life leadership
Mhm.
coach, a keynote speaker, and more importantly, a number one Amazon bestseller author. And you spent more than 10 years in successful operation
Mhm.
sales. Talk to us a little bit about
All
yourself,
right.
Chris.
Well, would you like to know the origin story to that in terms of martial arts? I
Sure,
started
yes.
my martial art training back in 1973, a short little chubby 10-year-old. And I was enamored with a TV show that was on ABC at the time, which some of your more seasoned listeners may remember, called Kung Fu. And so Kwai Chang
Mm,
Caine was the monk walking across the American desert. And he would go into a little town. The bad guys would try to beat him up, and he would take care of them using his kung fu. And it was the coolest thing I've ever seen on the planet. So I literally begged my mom in my little town in the Midwest to let me go to a community center where they were doing what they called at the time Korean karate. The term Taekwondo was not even used in the United States vernacular that much. And I felt like I came home when I saw these people with these amazingly powerful movements. And interestingly enough, at that time, JB, and it may be maybe a shift for you, is martial arts at the time, particularly karate, taekwondo, kung fu, was there were not a lot of children in it at that time. That didn't really come about until the Karate Kid movies came in the early 80s, right?
ah,
So I
okay.
was training with
Okay.
a bunch of 20, 25-year-old males, and I was the only kid.
Sure.
But I grew up fast and I wouldn't quit.
Hmm.
And that was, going, this is my 53rd year and haven't stopped yet.
Wow, that's amazing. Can you get higher than an eighth
Well, in
degree black
Taekwondo, there are
belt?
9 degrees of black belt. And the
Okay.
way that I've heard it explained throughout the years, and I think it's worth sharing right now. First, the third degree black belts generally tend to be the students and or the fighters, right? And then when you go to fourth to sixth degree, you become the instructors or the teachers. And then seventh to ninth degree, we would be considered the philosophers, right? So being able to take all those
Mm,
lessons that we've learned throughout our decades in martial arts and not only teach, but also the physical movements of martial arts, but also the philosophical aspect of martial arts. So that's
sure.
what
Sure.
I feel blessed enough to be able to do today.
That's awesome. I've heard, through my son's Taekwondo school that it's rare to find an eighth degree
Mhm,
black belt. So you said it perfectly earlier, 53
mhm.
years. That's
Thank you.
amazing. Chris, why is Taekwondo so important?
Well, it's interesting. We were talking before we began recording, and you were sharing with me about your son. And I want to congratulate you here on camera because, as I shared with you, I always tell my students, in fact, just had a black belt testing here in Denver last weekend, is that nobody gets to
Sure.
black belt by themselves. So, of course, they have the help
Mhm.
of their instructors and their fellow training partners and students. But the parents, particularly when you're talking about children, play an incredibly important role. So I just wanted to give you and your wife kudos for that because I think that's just awesome. But in my opinion,
Thank
the
you.
reason that it's so important is because martial arts, particularly Taekwondo, which is my area of expertise, combines not only the physical movement, which is great for our body, mind, and spirit, but also the philosophical and character development aspects that are inherent in the training. So, you can get a lot of great rewards from all types of athletics. And I'm a huge proponent
Mhm.
of that in balance in any person's life, particularly
Sure.
children. And I played team sports. I went to college on a football scholarship. So I played in that realm and saw the value of it. There's great value in terms of particularly working on a team. But in my experience
Sure.
and, in 5+ decades, I've never seen anything match martial arts because of that integration of the
Mhm.
philosophical and the character development along with the physical skills. And so what we're doing is we're
Sure.
really teaching people how to be great problem solvers in their life and being able to move through obstacles, being able to do it in a respectful way, do it in a focused way, and do it in a way that where they're taking care of themselves so they can eventually help take care of others.
Yeah, that's great. What is the 5 tenets of
Yes.
Taekwondo? It was a
Oh,
perseverance,
courtesy,
self-control,
courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. Yes.
phenomenal spirit.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
I love it. Right now, if my son was listening to me say it backwards or incorrectly, he would be extremely upset at me, Chris. Dad, I've been going to Taekwondo for so many years. How dare you say it incorrectly? But um, Chris, so what is the biggest lessons you have learned from
Oh
martial
my, that's
arts?
a expansive question there, JV. It's difficult to choose
Okay.
just one. I think that and this is one that I teach all the time. In fact, I was just giving a talk to a number of teenagers here in Denver in last week at a conference, and I set it up
Sure.
by talking about how many times we think that people who are showing success in life do so because they're talented, they have come from great socioeconomic backgrounds, they go to great schools, and all those things can be an advantage to people. But the people that
Sure.
have really excelled, and particularly when I look at all the black belts that I've been blessed to be able to nurture throughout the years. I last count I have over 2,000 students that have received their black belt with me. And I can only think of only two that when they first came to me, JV, had really all the skills necessary where I said, they're going to be a black belt. Focus, concentration,
Mhm.
flexibility, courage, all those attributes. Only two. Now, one got their fourth degree black belt with me, and another got their second degree.
Awesome.
But what about the other
Yeah.
1998? Well, they were the ones that they just kept showing up. They were the ones that went through the adversity. They were the ones that maybe it wasn't easy for them physically. Maybe they had fears that they had to overcome. Maybe they had injuries they had to transcend. But what was interesting about that is when they stuck it out, that's where they grew as human beings. And interestingly enough, most of them that had the biggest difficulty at the beginning became not only my best black belts, but my best instructors
Mm.
that I developed. And so, in
Okay.
essence, what they did is they emulated what we say in martial arts all the time is that a black belt is a white belt that never quit.
Mm.
So it's that idea
Mm.
of continual perseverance, right? Of being able to lean into challenges, believe in yourself, and maybe even move when you don't believe in yourself so that you can come out the other
Sure.
side.
That is extremely powerful. I never really thought
Yeah.
about it in that perspective. Chris, sales. Spent over 10 years
Mhm.
in sales before you decided to move on. Talk to us about your sales path
Yeah.
and
Well,
career.
it's interesting. I started right out of college. So I played football for
Mhm.
4 years at Northwestern University and then was
Okay.
recruited by the Procter and Gamble Distributing Company and was with them for 10 years right out of college. Had a marvelous experience with them. Learned tremendous lessons in terms of business and personal growth. Worked with a tremendous amount of wonderful people. But there was always this thing in the back of my mind that, man, I really want to be doing Taekwondo. I really want to be teaching. And the
Mhm.
turning point for me
Sure.
was being at, I was at the time, one of my customers was the third largest grocery chain in the country. And we were doing a
Okay.
corporate sales review. So the CEO and the
Mhm.
president and the CEO were all there. And I went up and I gave my presentation. And then I sat down. And as soon as I sat down, I started daydreaming about getting back to Denver to teach a Taekwondo class that night. And I
Sure.
realized, oh my
Sure.
gosh, this isn't where I'm supposed to
Yeah.
be. But that being
Exactly.
said, the sales that I learned from that is I realized that the power of sales, not only when I was in my P&G role and I was selling shampoo and conditioner and deodorant, were the same things I was doing when I was selling my martial art program and enrolling people into it.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that I was trying to manipulate people, not at all. I was influencing them. I was able to communicate clearly the benefits that I provide to them. And also, people understand when you're coming to them in an authentic manner. And so when you believe
Sure.
something truly that it's going to benefit someone, you're not really selling, right? You're serving them. You're telling them about the benefits, and they can choose in or they can choose out. So sales, what I also found is it can also be very vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage
Mm-hmm.
to be able to stand in front of
Sure.
someone. I used to joke I'd be in front of all these big business people in the corporate world. But then when I opened my martial arts studio and I was sitting across the table from the mother of an 8-year old, enrolling them in my program, I was more nervous then, right? But it
Yeah.
was about,
Yeah.
again, being authentic. And if we truly believe in what we're representing, then I find sales to be very, very easy, not easy to do, but it's just a process. It's not something I had to work hard at.
Yeah. It's sales is you're bringing people together. You're
Yeah,
talking to people. You're having
that's right.
relationships with
That's right.
people, connecting the dots with other people at the same time, making an earning
Sure.
off of it.
Well, and I
So
would
it's
argue,
it's
JV, that we're selling all the time. Like, when
sure.
you and your wife decide, you would say, I want to go eat Chinese food. She wants to eat Italian. And you're trying to, encourage her to go to the
Hmm.
Chinese restaurant. You're selling, right? When your
Yeah.
son, when you're
Yeah.
trying to give him life lessons to tell him, this is what I want you to do. This is why doing your homework is important or eating this healthy way. You're selling him, right? And so it's a
Yeah.
natural way for us to interact with other human beings.
Yeah. Chris, you're also a life leadership
Hmm.
coach. And before we dive into that, when I was doing my
Hmm.
research about you, I saw a video. And what caught my attention about the video is the people you were talking to, they had a
Okay.
board and they wrote
Yeah.
some
Yeah. Yeah.
words. And then you had the individuals
Right.
break the board and you saw the emotions that came
Mhm.
out of that. Talk to us a
Sure.
little bit about what exactly am I
Yeah. Yeah.
explaining and
So
bringing
part
up?
of my business, I do have a coaching part of my business that I do. The other part of my business is keynote speaking, where I speak
Mhm.
and do inspirational speaking in front of corporations and organizations, and also like I did last week in terms of youth. But along with that, a tangential program to that is my board breaking experience. So what I do in that is I use the board these are the same boards my black belts break, right? What I do is I
Sure.
teach people in that 90 minutes to 2 hours, groups anywhere from 25 to 150 people in a room, about how to identify, first of all, a breakthrough that they want to experience in their life. And then we go through a process of, well, why haven't you achieved that yet? And most of the time, it's because there's a limiting belief or limiting beliefs that they're carrying. Sometimes they're even unconscious of. So I take them through a process
Wow.
and they will write their breakthrough on one side of the board. And then on the other side of the board, they will write the limiting belief that's been holding them back. And then I
Wow.
systematically take them through a process on how to use their heel palm to break the board. And then we hold the board with them looking directly at the limiting belief. And then they break through the
Yeah.
board. And as a result of that, they have that breakthrough basically in a physical manifestation. It's a representation of what they can do in their real lives in the real world. So it's one of the most it's some of the most profound work I get to do because you literally see people have a breakthrough, excuse the pun, right in front of you.
Mhm.
And generally speaking, Women maybe have a little bit of trepidation because they don't know if they have the power. And men have
Sure.
trepidation because they go, man, if a woman can break it and I can't, I'm going to look foolish, right? So all of those
Sure.
fears and
Sure.
everything come present. But then on the other side of
Hmm.
that is this exhilaration. And I literally, I do it several places here in Denver on a regular basis, and I'll go back after year to do it, and I'll have people just talk about amazing breakthroughs that they've had in their life, and how that board still sits in their office as a reminder of the powerful things they can
Yeah.
do.
I love that, Chris. Thank you for sharing. How do you feel when someone breaks that board and say, Chris,
Oh my
thank
gosh, I
you?
feel like a proud papa, and you know what's
Yes.
interesting, JV, is I was doing that for decades in the martial arts world,
Hmm.
right? And then I had a good friend of mine and fellow coach who was doing a business boot camp, and he asked me to create this program. And I had about 50 or 60 people in the room, and it went great. Everyone broke their boards, everyone was exhilarated, and I started having people come up to me afterwards saying, "So is this what you do? You go around the country and do this board breaking experience?" And I said, yeah, that's what I do now. And so now that's what I get to do. But I'll tell you what, when
Right.
when I see someone do it the first time, it's fantastic. But what's really great in that environment is every once and again, we'll have someone who struggles to break it on the first or second time. But then you see
Sure.
everybody get behind them and you feel the tension in the air. And then they break through and the entire place just goes nuts seeing them do
Hmm.
it. And you can just see the exhilaration and the joy and the confidence move through them. It's it's like candy. It's awesome.
Yeah. And Chris, you must have changed so many lives for the better. And that's
Thank
phenomenal. You
you.
should pat
Thank
yourself
you.
on the back because you deserve it. It's really amazing because there's people that's probably
Mhm.
struggling in life that don't know or don't have
Yeah.
a path of
Yeah.
where to go. And they find you somehow, they attend your keynote, they break a board. A week later, they're thanking you because their life
Yeah.
has
Well, thank you.
changed.
I guess I humbly accept that and I say thank you to that. And but I want to tell a little bit of my story. I think that will make sense to you as to why that's so important to me. So,
Mhm.
I told you I started martial art training in 1973 at age 10. But about 3 years after that, I met a man that would change my life forever, and his name is Grandmaster J.K. Lee. And Grandmaster Lee this year is going to celebrate his 85th birthday and his 50 years of
Mhm.
teaching martial arts in the United States.
Wow.
And I was there right at the beginning with him. And one of the first times I was in his class, I was seated in the back. I'd already been training for about 3 years at this point, right? But now he came and he was this amazing teacher. So I started following him. And I'm sitting in the back of the room and my legs were spread wide. I was stretching out, getting ready for the training that morning. And he walked down to this mat on the mat, and he had this amazing power and presence about him, just the way he carried himself. And he's
Sure.
surveying all the students, and pretty soon I realize he's looking directly at me. And before I can get up and move a muscle, he comes over and sits down in front of me. And he puts his right foot on the inside of one leg, his left foot on the inside of the other. He grabs the end of my belt, and with one push pull, whoosh, split me out to 180 degrees. Yeah. So
Wow.
I learned two very important life lessons from that experience, JV. Number one is anyone can do the splits once, right? But
Sure.
the second thing
Sure.
is, and the most important is when he looked me in the eyes and he said to me in his broken English, he said, I will make you a champion. I will make you a
Mm.
champion. Now, as a 13-year-old, all I thought about was medals and trophies. But what I realized later on is he was talking about being a champion in life, right? And beyond
Yes.
that, I also realized that even though my head heard, I'll make you a champion, and I saw the vision of all the tournament wins, what my heart heard at that time was, I believe in you. And as a young
Yeah.
boy, I was growing up in a household where my mom was my absolute hero. She helped raise,
Mhm.
she raised three of us at the same time being married to my father who was struggling with his alcoholism. So I
Sure.
never knew who I was going to come home to as a father. Was I going to see the jovial guy that I loved to talk sports with, or was I going to be seeing the guy that was just the opposite of that? And so when my instructor said that to me and said that he believed in me, it was life changing for me because I had someone who I tremendously loved, admired, and respected say, I see greatness in you and I will carry you through this. And it was life changing because now all of a sudden I said, wow, there's a path. There's a path for me. So really,
Sure.
really, I guess I'm just doing my best to pay that forward is what I'm doing. It's so life
That's
changing
great.
for me.
That is awesome. It's important, Chris, when a human being, whoever it is, says some kind of words that may spark a light bulb
Yes.
in you that you will remember 20, 30,
Mhm.
50 years, and just seeing your energy speaking about your past and your experiences, it's fundamental, it's
Oh, thank you.
phenomenal.
Thank you.
So
Well, and that's the thing I
absolutely.
would say too for those of us who have the opportunity, whether it's parenting or coaching or just we're around youth, understanding how powerful our words can be, right? And how just that one sentence, and that doesn't mean that we walk on eggshells, but what it means is we know that when we come forward with good intention and a loving way of trying to support young people, we can have a profound impact that we may never know we had.
Yeah. Chris, I read something about the three
Mhm, mhm.
C's of creating breakthroughs and how we can use them
Mhm.
in our lives. What exactly are
Yeah.
the three
Well,
C's?
it's interesting. And I appreciate you asking me. I created those three C's as an adjunct to my board breaking experience. And I'll just kind of give you a
Mhm.
brief little history of it. I would go to these events that I would come back year after year and I'd ask people how their breakthrough went. And about half of the time, people say, "Oh my gosh, it was the best thing. I used it as a big catalyst, and I created all these things in this last year. It was fantastic." And then I'd see another group of people, and they'd say, "Wow, I love breaking the board." And I'd say, "Well, where are you at on your breakthrough?" And they'd say, "Well, I'm still kind of working on it." And I realized that people needed a path, right? Rather than
Mhm.
just that experience of breaking a piece of wood, they needed a path after that. So I wrote a book called Breaking Through. And within that, the entire structure is built around the three C's of creating breakthroughs. And so the first C is clarifying your vision. So getting very, very clear about what you want to create, what you want to experience. And my experiences when I work as a life leadership coach, when I work as a martial arts instructor, is when I ask people what they want, many times they're not clear about it. Now they're very clear to articulate what they don't want, right?
Sure.
They don't want to be overweight. They
Mhm.
don't want to have bad relationships. They don't want to have money pressures. They don't want to have, fill in the blank. So the idea there is what you focus on expands. So if you're focusing on what you don't want, what you're looking for, you'll probably find. So, how do you
Mm.
change that into, okay, let's turn that around. Let's do the 180. And if you know what you don't want, how can you turn that into what you do want? You want to be fit. You want
Sure.
to have great relationships. You want to be, have monetary prosperity in your life. Whatever it is, you want to be a black belt and get clear on that vision. And that's the vision that carries you forward. And then also being able to understand why that vision is important to you. See, when we have a really powerful why, then when challenges come up, we're much less apt to get off track because why we're doing it is so ingrained in our psyche. So the first C
Sure.
is to clarify your vision. Yeah.
Like it.
So the
Like
second C is to create a plan. Like, how do you get there?
Mhm.
So, it's like using the martial arts as a metaphor. You don't show up one day and say, I want to be a black belt. And then you come back the next week and they give you a black belt. As you
Right.
know, your son went through it. There's a very systematic plan. There are different belts and
Absolutely.
criteria that they need to go through. And what many
Mhm.
people will do is they get very focused on their end vision, but that end vision is so big to them, it becomes intimidating and they don't even take steps toward it. So when you create a plan, you begin with the end in mind, but then you break it down into small digestible chunks. just like we do in the belt system in Taekwondo, right? You go from your white belt
Yes.
to your yellow belt. You can do that with
Right.
anything in life. And then what happens is when you set these small incremental goals, you start getting momentum. You start feeling better about
Mhm.
it. Now
Right.
it becomes part of your life. So the second is to
Absolutely.
create that plan.
Create
Yes.
the
And then the
plan.
final
Okay.
one, which you can have the best plan in the world, but if you write it out and put it in your desk drawer, nothing's going to happen. You need to take consistent action, right? Consistent
Consistent
action.
action.
And
Okay.
what I always coach my clients to do is make those small consistent actions, because small consistent actions done over time can lead to massive results. Case in point,
Hmm.
let's say, JV, you chose something in your life that you wanted to get 1% better at each and every day. So each and every day, whatever that
Sure.
was, physical, mental, emotional, whatever, spiritual, you're just going to get 1% better. That's what you concentrate on each and every day. Well, if you maintain that pace, at the end of a year, JV, you would be 37 times better than when you started. Statistically speaking, not bad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now let's take that a step further. What if you decided to maintain that pace for 2 years? Most people
Sure.
would think, well, heck, I'd be 74 times better. But that's not true.
Right.
You'd be 1,400 times better, because your good habits don't add up, they compound like compounding interest.
Mm.
They start to grow
Sure.
exponentially. And if you maintain that pace for 5 years, you'd be 76 million times better, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what we want to do, is once we have that plan, is build it as part of your regular daily routines to take consistent action. And that's when you can achieve breakthrough results. So those are the three C's.
I love that. So one more time, the three C's
Clarify your
are
vision,
number one,
create
number
your
two,
plan,
and
take
number three.
consistent action.
I love that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You were just talking about your books, um, Breaking Through, and you have a second book, Black Belt
Correct.
Leadership. Talk to the audience about your
Well,
second book.
actually, the second book was my first book. So Black Belt
Okay.
Leadership was published first in 2013, and that was you'll appreciate this story. Um, I had, when I tested for my seventh degree black belt back in 2008, I created the test. So my instructor said, I want you to create to demonstrate your skills. And so what I did during that is I would perform certain things, and then I would have a little break, and I would have one of my students talk about what I created to be my 7 qualities of black belt leadership. Okay. So I
Mhm.
performed for a little bit. Then one of my top students would talk about, creating a purposeful vision in your life. And then I would perform again, and then they would talk about being the change you wish to see. And these were the 7 qualities, right? Well, at the end of that, I had someone who I was very close to said, well, that's a talk, right? Those
Mhm.
7 qualities are a talk. So as I started my speaking career, that's what I would speak on. And then that same person over time said, well, that's a book. So basically, Black
Yes.
Belt Leadership is an extension of my keynote talk. And it's those 7 qualities that I actually created because it was my seventh degree black belt, because I came up with 7. But when I really reflected on them, those were the qualities that were very consistent in my life, that I not only use personally, but also professionally and also in the martial arts. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Chris, you are a
Mhm.
national champion. What did it take to become a national
Yeah.
champion? How much hard work? Can you just explain to the audience? Because people may be listening or watching this episode and saying, "Oh, I could do that." I personally know how hard work is involved. Can you just share that experience with the audience,
Well,
please?
I'll answer that in a couple of ways, because of course, hard work is a relative term, right? And of course,
Sure.
any athlete that achieves a high degree of success, it's it's a given that you have to be dedicated
Mhm.
to, and you have to put in maximum effort. I think the difference between the people that achieve at a moderate level and that achieve at an extraordinary level, the difference is very, very small in terms of what that tipping point is. Because everybody that I competed against in 1999 when I won the national championship, and everyone I competed against in 1998 when I lost in the finals and I took the silver medal, we all practiced
Sure.
hard. We all practiced hard. But what I would say is, first of
Hmm.
all, you need to have a love for what you're doing, right? If you're doing it because someone else is telling you it's important or you think you have to do it, that will only take you so far. So you generally have to learn to love it, but not learn to love it because of the end result. Learn to love it because you love the practice. You love
Sure.
the training. You love the sweatiness. You love the small improvements that you have, right? And number two, you also have to learn that you're constantly learning and you're constantly needing to grow. And you're using that training as a metaphor, as a
Hmm.
means of applying to your life. The other thing that's important is, and this isn't always easy when you're a high level athlete, is to learn to train efficiently, because training hard isn't always the best way. Sometimes the greatest discipline is being able to train in a balanced way. When I was getting ready to test for that 6th degree black belt test my 6th degree black belt test, I was my body was starting to break down because I was training so hard for it. And I went to my
Sure.
homeopathic doctor and he ran all these tests. And he said to me, he said, "You're getting ready for a major injury." He said, "I think you're not only going to pull a hamstring, you're going to tear one. You have to back things
Oh
down." And
my.
I was very resistant. I said, "I got to keep training hard. My instructors are coming in
Mhm.
town." And he said, "You have to remember that rest is part of your training." Yeah, well, think about it.
Really?
Like if you're
Yeah.
doing weight training, you don't do bench press every day. You do
Right.
bench press on Monday,
Right.
then you rest, and Tuesday you might pick it up.
Sure.
And the other thing that I'll end with, which was a great life lesson for me, is a concept that I teach not only my students, but my life leadership clients, is the concept of pre-commitment. Pre-commitment. So, I often tell my students that we don't teach discipline in martial arts. We teach self-discipline in martial arts. And
Sure.
pre-commitment is basically this. Let's use an example of you decide that you want to get in better shape. And so you're going to start walking or running every morning. And you wake up that morning, you're going to start, and you had told yourself the night before you're going to hit the road, and the alarm goes off a half an hour early, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this bed seems so warm and cozy. I'll tell you what, I'm going to
Mm.
put it on snooze. I'll run at lunchtime." And then lunchtime comes and something comes up. You say, "I'll do it when I get home," and it never happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pre-commitment is this. I am doing this. I committed to it the night before, and I literally put my running clothes at the edge of my bed in my shoes. And as soon as I hear the alarm, I've already committed that when I hear it, I'm going to sit up immediately and I'm going to get dressed. I
Yes.
pre-committed to that activity. And then I'm going to get out and because once I get moving, now I'll get there. I one time had a coach say to me, "What does feeling like it have anything to do with it?" Now, I want to back
Mm.
up a little bit. Like there are times as an athlete, as I was saying before, you overtrain, you have to listen to your body and maybe back off. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the time when you're like, "Oh my gosh, I think I'll just sit home today and watch TV rather than go to Taekwondo class or do my training." Well,
Sure.
that's because I don't feel like going. Well, what does that have to do with anything? You committed to a higher level. And that's the small tipping point between those that do well and those that achieve excellence, is that small piece of being committed to what we promise ourselves we're going to do. That's pre-commitment.
Yes. That's great. Chris, you said something important. You use an important word. And for an audience member, they may say, I know what the word discipline means. Can you explain what self
Yeah.
discipline means?
Each and every one of us have habits, right? I
Hmm.
mean, if you were to take an objective view of yourself, you'd see all the habits you carry on throughout the day, from the time you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed. And
Yes.
I believe discipline is being able to consistently carry through with positive and productive habits in our lives on a daily basis, right? So, like
Yes.
for me,
Yes.
one of the things I've developed through the years is something called the 6 M's of morning mastery. So, these are the 6 things that I do in the first hour of every day. And I do these because that's my discipline of setting myself up for success for the rest of the day. So I start each day with some sort of mindfulness, meditation. It's one of the first things I
Sure.
do after I drink water and really, go to the bathroom. I sit down and I do some meditation, and then I do what I call mind treatment. So I'm doing positive affirmative statements in my mind. So that's my mind treatment. I'm getting myself to recalibrate those synapses in my brain, because people will tell
Sure.
us we'll have up to 70,000 thoughts per day. And the majority of those are negative if we don't train ourselves. The opposite of
Oh
that.
my.
Then
Yes.
the third element is called mental imagery. And that's basically imaging the day that I want to create. I already had this interview with you, JV, when I was visualizing it this morning, right? And I one time
Sure.
had a coach tell me, Chris, if you're gonna fantasize, you might as well win, right? So having a
Yes.
mental imagery to that. The fourth M is movement. Now, note I didn't say exercise, but movement. Our bodies were designed to move. So, what's a stretching, a walking, a yoga, a calisthenics? What is that for you each and every day?
Sure.
The next is motivation. Is it through books? Is it through videos? I mean, we have these phones, right, that have the best library on the planet that we've ever had, where we can
Absolutely.
tap in to motivation. And then finally, the sixth M is memoirs, and that's doing journaling each day. So that's how I start
Mm.
every day, the first hour of every day. And that is, to me, is a discipline of success. And then I can apply those lessons learned to my other disciplines. But they just become positive habits that you not only have committed yourself to, but they're easy to be part of your regular daily routine. Until they become easy and they're just part of you, every day's going to be a crapshoot. But if you decide this is what I'm
Sure.
going to do, and it just rolls into your regular routine, you're much more apt to having that successful experience.
Yes. Chris, I could relate because I've said this before on prior episodes. It took me 3 years to create the Influence Exchange podcast. And the reason why, Chris, is I had the discipline, but not the self discipline. I was not motivated in a way. I had my mind where I had those
Sure.
negative thoughts, and I had to train myself within time, speaking to family members, speaking to my wife. And it took 3 long years, Chris, to finally train myself, have the correct mindset to say, I'm stepping
Right.
forward, training
Mhm.
myself with those positive
Yep.
thoughts. And I do exactly what you just said. When my alarm wakes up in the morning, I'm
Mhm.
jumping out of bed. I can't remember the last time I hit snooze. I'm journaling. I am walking or on the
Yeah. Yeah.
treadmill. I am doing stuff that's motivating myself to do
Yes.
better. So I'm glad you
Yeah.
share
Well,
that, Chris, because I could
Well,
completely
and kudos
relate.
to you,
And
JV, because, I did my own research on this, whatever, 10, 15 years ago when I started these practices. And I started researching people that I really admired, that I saw were being successful in the world. And almost every one of them, to a person, had a powerful morning routine. Everyone. I
hmm
thought, wow, that is something
yeah,
I can emulate. And it might mean that I was getting out of bed a little bit earlier than I was before, but then I just developed going to bed a little
sure.
earlier, and now it's part of my lifestyle.
So, Chris, you are a life leadership coach. Talk to us about what do
Mhm.
you do?
Well, I believe deep in my soul that each and every one of us has profound gifts that we have to share in this life experience. And sometimes we are fortunate to know exactly what that means. And we're actually
Sure.
able to provide, our love and our experience and our gifts in the world in an active way. And sometimes people aren't. And so I believe that in order to be a leader of anyone, any group, whether it's large or small, we first have to be leaders of ourselves, right? So
Sure.
what I basically
Yes.
do is I help people identify those breakthroughs that they want to have. And then I say, okay, now what do we need to do? First of all, to identify that, what that vision is for you. And then how do we break it down into that plan like I did in the three C's, right? And then what's the action? But then also, what are the limiting beliefs that are holding you back? What are some of the skill sets that maybe you need to develop as part of that? And then what we do is we develop a plan about how you can make that integrated within your life. Again, through consistent effort each and every day. It's very, very few people have breakthroughs that are life changing in one single moment. It's not like, I mean, I'm sure it does happen where the lightning bolt hits them and then all of a sudden, they knocked off the horse and they're ready to
Right.
go. Most people have to
Mhm.
work consistently at it to make it a active routine in their lives. So I do that both in individual coaching, not only personal, but also professional coaching. I also do it in group formats where I have, the formats of my books that I have in video form where people go through processes, then they come together in groups where they talk about their challenges, they talk about the victories, and we actually, everyone is self-coaching one another. So I facilitate that process as well. So again, I
Sure.
do that. Sometimes people do it with a focus on business. Sometimes they do with, personal things about them. Sometimes it's about health and wellness, but it's really about helping them take those things that they want in their lives to express in the most powerful way, but helping them develop a path toward that. And martial arts obviously is my metaphor for that. It's basically using those martial
Sure.
art principles that I would help for decades to get people to black belt and help them become black belt parents or black belt business people or black belt wellness recipients. That's basically what I'm doing.
That's great. You're doing a
Thanks, my
great
friend.
job. You're welcome. Chris, for someone that's struggling, maybe health reason,
Yeah.
wellness, right? What would be your advice for that
Yeah.
individual?
Well, the first thing is to get real with yourself about what's actually happening. Okay.
Hmm.
Many times when we're dealing with struggles and challenges, we're in this constant resistance, right? I don't like what's happening. This is not good for me. I don't want it to happen. And we fight it. And it's not to say we need to necessarily enjoy when we're struggling. But what I always tell people is slow down. And after you've gone through the emotional aspect of, I don't like this, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm scared. And those are all totally, totally wonderful human emotions. And you need to go through those. But after you
Sure.
process that, then take a breath and ask yourself, what's really happening here? Without my story that I'm bringing to it, right? This guy said this,
Right.
my boss said this, my wife said this, my husband, right? Okay, without the story, what's happening? Well, this person said this, and that's what happened. Okay, boom. You identify what's happening because now you can have an awareness and looking at it objectively. And awareness
Mhm.
is the first step in breakthrough, the first step in transformation.
Sure.
And then once you've identified that, then ask yourself three simple questions. Number one, what do I need to keep doing in this situation? Positive
Sure.
habits, positive languaging, positive visualization. What do I need to keep doing? What are the things that I've been doing on a consistent basis that have brought me to this point that are really positive in my life? What do I need to keep doing? Number two, get very real with yourself and say, what do I need to stop doing? What do I need to
Sure.
stop doing? We do so many things through habit and we do things unconsciously. And I don't know if you've ever heard the story, I'll just give the abbreviated version, but it's the story of cutting out both ends of the ham. Have you ever heard the story? Three
I
generations
have.
of women are in the kitchen for
Yep.
Christmas. The
Hmm.
daughter cuts off both ends of the ham and puts it in the oven, looks at her mom and says, Mom, I put the ham in the oven, but I'm curious, why do I cut off both ends? And she says, Honey, I don't know. That's the way I was done. That's what my mom taught me. Let's ask her. Hey, Mom, talking to the
Yeah.
grandma, why do we cut off both ends of the ham?
Yeah.
Well, she doesn't know. So they call great grandma in the old country. Mama, why do we
Right.
cut off both ends of the ham? She goes, Oh, honey, when I was growing up, we had a very small pan and the ham wouldn't fit in. So we had to cut off both ends, right? We just keep
Right. Right.
doing what we've
Right.
always done and expect a different result. Einstein said
Right.
that was insanity. So, what do you need to stop doing? And then finally, question number three to ask yourself is, what do I need to start doing? Is there a different behavior, a different mindset?
Mhm.
Whatever that is, what do I need to start doing to be able to break through? So, what do I need to keep doing, what do I need to stop doing, and then what do I need to start doing.
I love it. Chris, you have some amazing, amazing advice, and your experiences shows for it. So, Chris, what is your
Mm,
inspiration
mm,
today? What
wow.
inspires you?
I think it goes along with the work that I'm doing. I get incredibly inspired by people who are doing great acts of service in the world. So I get inspired by watching martial arts instructors doing great acts of service. I get inspired by people that, whether they're adults or they're even kids, that are going beyond um, their comfort zones to make a positive influence and maybe standing up for a cause, even though it may not have been popular at the beginning, but they step forward. I also get inspired by people, who have dealt with some real hardships, maybe particularly even physical hardships. Maybe they're confined now to a wheelchair or something like that. One of the things each one of our black belts has to do in the 4 months prior to their training is they have to do a day of empathy. So after they train
Mm,
for 3 years and they have 4 months prep cycle to get their black belt, they have to spend a 24-hour period being blind, deaf, mute, or in a wheelchair. So they understand what
mm,
it is to go through hardships and come out on the other side. And so I get extremely
sure.
inspired when I see people that have gone through those hardships, as well as the people that are helping them go through those hardships. I get incredibly moved. So being able to use our gifts for good, and sometimes that can be in professional situations. Sometimes it can be in spiritual and religious situations. It can be done in sports and martial arts. But when people are taking the time to step out of their comfort zones and serve, that's what inspires me the most.
I love that. Absolutely. My son had to, in October, before he became a black belt, he had to take an egg around for
Oh,
1 week, meaning he sleeps with
yes.
the egg, he
Yeah.
carries it in his backpack, takes it to
Oh,
school, he takes it everywhere he goes for 7
yes.
days. And if the
Yeah.
egg cracks or breaks,
Oh my
that's it.
gosh.
It it showed him how, for a young
Yes.
kid, it's showing how to be
Oh my gosh. I
responsible.
love this. Yes.
Yeah, and he did it. I was nervous
Yes, of
for him.
course. Of course.
He did
Oh
a
my
great job. He
gosh.
did a great
And
job.
what a great
Yeah.
example of mindfulness. Because,
Mhm.
I'll often just, these are some of the best tools on the planet, right? In fact, it's got more computer power in it than the moon that landed on the moon that was in the lunar module that landed on the moon. I'm sorry, the computer system that was in the lunar module that landed on the moon in '69. More computer power in it,
Mm,
and we
yeah.
use it to what? Argue with strangers and watch cat videos, right? So we have
Right,
all these
right.
opportunities to get distracted in our lives. But when we slow down and we become mindful, we understand the power of not only taking care of
Mhm.
something, but what it's like to really connect with another human being, right?
Yes,
And that's a superpower in and of itself. Yeah.
absolutely. So, Chris, we run out of time, and I usually like to ask
Hmm.
my guests one
Sure.
last question. What are your final thoughts or
Yeah.
message you
Yeah.
would like to share with
Yeah.
the world?
One of the lines that I use in my keynote speaking very often is a champion doesn't need to be told what to do, they just need to be reminded. And what I mean by that, I mean, I have two meanings to that is number one, is I believe we all have an inner champion. That was what my first book was really about as well. And that might mean that we discover the fact that we have that champion inside of ourselves and that we can, there's a power inside that's greater that we don't even, may not even be aware of. So be my hope that everyone
Sure.
goes through that journey to be able to rediscover that, remember that. And the other thing is to know that to remind ourselves sometimes also being proactive and changing our mindset, because when we do that, everything can open up for us. Because we may not be able to control everything that happens to us in the outside world, but we can always have control how we respond to it. And that's what it is to be a black belt leader.
I love that. Chris, you have been
Thank you.
phenomenal. I had a great time talking to you today. It's been a pleasure. I want to thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much. Enjoy the rest
Thanks,
of your
my friend.
day.
It's been my pleasure. And I'll tell you what, tell your son the best of luck. Does his instructor use the term Pilsung? Does he? Yes. So tell him
Yes.
Pilsung for me, certain victory, and keep going toward his second Poom. And I look forward to hearing great stories in the future about how he's continued his training.
Awesome. Thank you
You're
for those
welcome.
kind words,
Bye
Chris.
bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Before I go, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for pressing play. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube. I truly appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any other platform, follow the podcast so you don't miss out on the next episode. Because we're going to keep having real, honest conversations like this. And remember, your influence grows every time you choose courage over comfort. I'm JV. Stay curious, stay consistent, and keep influencing others. Peace out.